Welcome to our coaching this afternoon. Today we have something really special for you. Our coaching mates, classmates, our fellow disciple makers in the UK are with us, and they're going to be sharing about a push week that they just had. Actually, I think it was a push weekend. And I'm excited about this for a couple of reasons. Number one, because it was the first that I know of eLife sponsored push weekend that we've had internationally, at least as far as our coaching group goes. Maybe in some of the other coaching groups, they've already done it. And then secondly, I'm just really proud of what they've done in a context that's not as easy to have people talk to you, perhaps, as it is in some of the places that we live. And I think you're really going to enjoy what they have to say today. But welcome, Chris and Lisa Mason, and also Faye. And they collaborated. They live in two cities that are near each other. And that's one of the values that we have as disciple makers is collaborating and working together. And Faye and Chris and Lisa work together to do this. So if y'all are ready to share with us, we're ready to listen to what you have.
Yeah, we are. We're good to go. Welcome. Thanks for having us contribute this evening. It's evening for us. It's getting dark outside, and it's nowhere near 100 degrees. It's more like we used degrees centigrade, and it's about 17 outside. But this evening, Lisa, Faye, and I are just going to share some of the things that happened before, during, and after our push weekend a couple of weekends ago now. And so just before we get started, I guess I just wanted to share a little bit of our context. Often, I guess the UK and particularly America get put together, but actually we're very different countries with a very different past. But roughly, we think that the stats show that something like 1 to 2% of Leeds and Bradford are actively part of the Christian community. And so the kind of census results would suggest that it's more like 40%, something like that. But we are living in what is probably best termed as a post-Christian nation, a nation that was once described as a Christian nation and once had a huge Christian heritage, but is very different to that now. Leeds and Bradford are traditionally industrial cities in the north of England. So let me share my screen with you and show you some little maps to try and help us figure out where it is. So this is the United Kingdom, and bang in the middle of that big island is Leeds and Bradford. They're two cities that are right next to each other. They have grown into each other so much that you wouldn't know if you left one and joined the other. The top half up here, where it actually says United Kingdom up there, everything north of that is Scotland. And so everything south of that is England, apart from the bit that sticks out, which is Wales. And so we're here, which is technically the north of England, which is a historically industrial part of the nation, typically and historically very poor. There's been a big divide between the north and the south. And so there's just tons of kind of sociological issues going on between the kind of the south and the north, etc. Both cities, Leeds and Bradford, have populations that are amongst the youngest in Europe. And in Bradford, about 30% of the population would identify as Muslim. So it's a very different city to, or Bradford and Leeds are very different cities to maybe how, I guess, some of the story kind of goes as to what British places are like. So we went to 8 locations over 2 days, a Friday and a Saturday, 1 day in Leeds and 1 day in Bradford. And we were praying and asking where to go over the 3 weeks before that. And we're going to cover prayer a little bit later. Faye's going to cover that in detail. But we were praying during those 25 days, where is it that you want us to go in these two cities? There's about 1.5 million to 2 million people between these two cities. So choosing where is really important. So in Leeds, God led us to 4 different locations that came prophetically through prayer. And so this is an estate, Queenswood, where a few members of Faye's team live, and Hare Hills is another part of the city that has actually recently had some riots and some really difficult stuff going on. Holbeck, Faye will share a little bit more about that in a few minutes. That's where she lives. And then also into Morley. So these 4 different places. So we did 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon on the Friday. And then we moved to Bradford, which is just next to Leeds. And we went to, on the Saturday, we went to Holmwood, which is near where we live. This little blue dot is where we live. And Lister Park, which is actually a place where we feel God's leading us to move to. And then Lidget Green and the city centre. So we hit again 2 places in the morning and 2 places in the evening. So now Lisa's going to talk about us and our teams.
So yeah, Chris and I, we are, as we said, living in Bradford, and we've got a team that we meet regularly with, our like house church, our disciple making community. We have 10 children and 7 adults that are part of that team. Unfortunately, none of the other adults were able to make our push weekend from our team. They supported us in prayer and provided food, but none of them could come on the outreach. But our children came with us on the Saturday when they were off school. And then we also had a couple of people who we've connected with through disciple making. One man who's a particularly on fire street evangelist, who we've met recently, who's been a part of our team, sort of learning about disciple making and teaching us about just being proactive in evangelism and starting conversations with people. So he joined us as well. And then Faye, do you want to share about your team in Holbeck?
Yeah, great. So just briefly, I'm part of a multi-site church in Leeds, and one of the sites, Holbeck, is probably, well, we're like DMM leaning, and from that there's people that they've all done, most people have done the training, but then there's a smaller group of people that are then actively pursuing disciple making from that group, and then a few others from the other sites come to the same coaching. So it was a mixture from the different sites that came on that day, on those 2 days. Some that had a bit of experience and some that had no experience of DMM. So it was a bit of a mixture from Holbeck. Holbeck on the map is an area of high deprivation, 30% Urdu speaking Muslim population in our area. And so that's a bit about our teams, and we're going to just talk a little bit about how we kind of prepared and how we prayed a lot before, and some of the training that we did before. And Chris talked about us just praying, asking God like where to go, and yeah, he was just really kind in giving us a few places and then quite specific streets to different people. So it just felt really encouraging that he'd given us like clear streets to go to that kind of matched up. So we just felt like encouraged, and like we prayer walked those places before. And in the weeks before, we basically approached all the people that we could that had done some prayer support with us in the past, and people from our churches, people that have been praying for us. And we sent them out a prayer link for them to join, something like we had 25 days of prayer, where we just sent an email out each day with different things on it, different focuses on that. And we basically just robbed things that people had shared on Slack. So thanks so much. So I think Brent had shared like a movement prayer thing, and I think Stan had put something else on there. And we just followed an email that was structured that Friends of India use, that so we just use the structure that they had, because if they're using it, probably a good idea to use it as well. So I'll just share my screen and talk through like what that looked like. Sorry, I'll try and make it bigger. Yeah, so each day people would get an email like this, just thanking them for praying. We'd have like a little bit about when they could pray in that day. And what was great is because we were combining, like working together, like a few different teams, we could combine our like already like ordinary rhythms, and so it multiplied those rhythms because we were able to go to each other's and invite other people into those Zoom prayer. And people from like this call joined, that we were just really grateful for that. So people that have never been to like Leeds or Bradford were praying for us, and that was just like really impactful. So we're just thanks if that was you. Yeah, so we had like a specific focus for the day, and then a place that you can record your prayers. So like the time that you would pray for, I'll try and show you an example of that. Yeah, it's just like a basic counter like this, which you can add your prayer minutes to. And I'm not sure how much people were using that, but it was quite, it was encouraging for us to share at the training. Oh, look, people have been praying this much for this. And so that was encouraging for people to hear. It basically has like bits of the Bible from that focus on that area. So in this case, it was praying for people of peace, bits of the Bible, and then some prayer points linked to those. And we use this email to send out 3 stories over the 3 weeks, so that people that were coming had practiced learning 3 stories that we might share on the weekend that we went out. So it was Jesus calming the storm, Jesus welcoming the little children, and the prodigal son. So we just put these in the emails for people to be familiar with. And I think like a few people that were just praying for us that weren't linked. So someone's a friend's mom, she was like, oh, I feel very excited about people of peace. So it was like a good like a vision casting tool for her, that she never heard of that before. But yeah, so I'll just stop the share for now. Yeah, and then on the actual day, we invite people to pray with us on a WhatsApp group so that we could send out prayers at that time. And that was really helpful as well. And there was people that joined from, we're part of Catalyst, which is part of New Frontiers in the UK, and people from, like there was a guy from like who joined the call from Africa. It was just really kind, like, and just really encouraging. So that was helpful. And then we had we went for training on the day. Krista, do you want to talk about the 411 training?
Yeah, I'll talk about the 411 training. No Place Left have a really simple training called 411, 4 questions, 1 page, 1 piece of paper in 1 hour. So it's a really easy tool to use. They've got videos on how to use it. So we kind of adapted it slightly because it's primarily geared up for sharing with people to begin to evangelize to their natural oikos. And so we tweaked it slightly to use in a kind of push week setting. So let me just share my screen with you again. So 411, 4 questions, 1 piece of paper, 1 hour. I think we actually compressed this into about 40 minutes so that we could get some time to pray and get out and only spend an hour together. And so we could eat some food together as well. So this first question is why? And so it's really simple. You take a piece of paper and you fold it in half. And so then you put the 4 questions on each side of the piece of paper. And so then the person can take it away with them, and then they can train other people from that. So why are we doing what we're doing? Matthew 28, 2 Corinthians 5, we're a new creation, called to be ambassadors. Nice little picture of Lisa doing some teaching on the 411 training. Then who are we going to reach? Who do we go to? And so we just looked really simply at oikos to try and cast vision for the fact that we're not just going after person 1, we're actually going after their oikos. And so to kind of reiterate that we weren't asking people to invite people back to something, but to take the gospel to, so that they might discover. So that was quite a helpful casting vision, particularly I think Faye mentioned before, some of our team disciple making is a new approach for them, and so that was really helpful. And then we kind of stole some of the stuff from sort of treasure hunting, just some really simple who, where, what. Is there anything that God's saying about who we should look for, where we should go, or anything specific, like, I don't know, a lady who's sat in her garden wearing a red hat. for example. And so then we're looking for that as we go out. So just to try and help people get really practical. The third question was then what? So we briefly went over the conversation quadrant, just so that we were aiming to, as we went out each time, we're aiming to get to spiritual very quickly, because you don't have the time to kind of spend working your way around casual and meaningful. And so the kind of questions that we needed to ask needed to go straight to spiritual. So, hi, we're just spending some time in the area today. Do you have any pain in your body or any stress in your life? And so you're immediately round through into meaningful. Their answer then takes it spiritual. And so we were there pretty quickly. Then we like 3 different stories. These were just 3 that I did with a different group. This was Man Lowered Through a Roof. I just asked 3 people what they had. And then a 15-second testimony. So I watched this in first hand. We were chatting to a guy, and he turned around and he said to Faye, well, why are you even doing this? Why are you even out here? And she just immediately came back. Well, there was a time in my life when, and she told him that, and then I met Jesus and he did this, and now this has happened. Do you have a story like that? And it like totally flipped. And the guy, I mean, he was like almost in tears within about 5 minutes of Faye speaking. It was amazing. But she just turned a question that was quite accusatory right round by simply sharing that little 15-second testimony. And then lastly, when set some goals. So when are you going to pray for the lost? When are you going to share a story? And when are you going to train someone else? And then we finished with Matthew 10 on both of our trainings, where we just went through Matthew 10, had a couple of people read it out. This is Jesus sending out, and then asking the question, what does Jesus tell them to do? And then it was amazing. On day 1, Faye just literally went through and went, well, Jesus said to go out in pairs, so that's what we're going to do today. Jesus said go and heal the sick, so that's what we're going to do today. Jesus said to not take anything with you, so we're not going to take anything with us. So by the end of the list, you're like, okay, is everyone ready to go? And so it was kind of a helpful launch pad to head off into what we were doing. And we had a lady with us from another country, and she said God spoke to her in December about having a strategy for evangelism, and she's not known what to do. She's like, I don't know, what is a strategy for evangelism? We did this training, and she's like, I've got this. I'm going to train my team. This is my strategy for evangelism. And off she went. It was really helpful. So, Lisa.
So yeah, do you want to put the picture of the board up?
Oh,
so
yeah.
we had 18 people came out of us on the Friday, and 10 of us went out on the Saturday. And then we did a tally, like Brent, on how many spiritual conversations do we have and how many people gave us their numbers for future contact. And so do you want to show the board? So this is after the morning.
After the first session.
First morning, we went out and we'd already had that many. Let's just keep going to it. Is that the final one?
Yeah, it's the final one, yeah.
So we ended up 94 spiritual conversations, and 18 people had either given or taken numbers for follow-up, which, considering how few of us there were, just felt absolutely miraculous. And also considering how, we just felt like that was a lot of follow-up for like that number of spiritual conversations. It felt really miraculous. So as we went out, we really could sense all the prayer that had gone into us going, and it felt unusually easy to get into spiritual conversations, but also sometimes we kind of knew who we were looking for, and so that really helped as well. So a couple of stories we can share. So on the Saturday, Chris mentioned God's called our family to a new part of the city. It's about 75% to 80% Muslim in that part of the city. And so as we were praying before we went, somebody gave me a word that I was going to meet a local guide who would be somebody who would help me settle in when we moved to that part of the city. And we went to the art gallery in the park near there. As we walked in the art gallery, my daughter was with me, and she said, oh, I had a dream that I was here last night. So that was immediately pretty exciting. And we've been praying that God would speak to our kids and use our kids as well through this process. And I met a lady almost as soon as I walked in the gift shop. Had a really brief conversation with her, but her kids needed to go, so she took them off to the playground. And we stayed in the art gallery, had a couple of conversations there, and then the kids wanted to go to the park. So the next stop we went to was the playground in the park. And I walked into the playground thinking, right, God, there's loads of women here. Like, who do you want me to speak to? And the first woman I saw was the one from the art gallery. And we greeted each other like old friends. It was so nice. And so I asked, what I could pray for her for, and she shared a need, but then just wanted to keep talking, and so we kept talking, and she just kept telling me stuff about the area. She was explaining what it had been like for her, because she's Bangladeshi, what it was like moving into a sort of majority Pakistani area. And then she started telling me other things about the area. And so in the end, I just said to her, look, somebody prayed that I would, we're moving here, and somebody prayed that I'd find a local guide. It seems like that might be you. And she said, oh yeah, I'd love to show you around. And so we swapped numbers, and she's, responded to me since. So I feel like that just was such an incredible blessing for me. But also I think what we've learned a lot over the last few weeks is, we learned a lot during this push time, is that as we're engaging with Muslims, it's not necessarily going to be a one-hit encounter. There's a journey that we need to enter into, and a relationship we need to enter into. And I feel like I'm at the start of a relationship with her, but it's very much on the grounds of me sharing stories about Jesus with her, offering to pray. So there's like a spiritual underpinning to our relationship, which feels exciting. Yeah, Faye, do you want to share some stories?
Yeah, it was just really fun to take out people that hadn't really gone out before, and just really encouraging for them. So into Hare Hills, which is where like somebody's just moved. She's called Jo, and she went out with a lady who is just happened to be back. She's actually church planting abroad, but was happened to be back for that weekend. And they went out, and they'd had 6 rejections before this conversation, but then this conversation they were just like, we did the whole thing and it was really easy. So they went through like they asked the question like, what can we pray? They did a testimony. They were like, do you want to share a story? Do you want to read the Bible? And initially, like one of the women, so it was 2 women, they were a couple, and one was quite dismissive, but the other one was like, no, stories from the Bible really change your life. So she was advocating for the Bible. And so yeah, it felt like it was they'd found people that were really interested. They did want to follow up these 2 women, and Jo herself was just really encouraged because she's she's started to do the 21-day disciple book, and has like enjoyed it, but she doesn't really like going out. So she was really encouraged by going out, and yeah, got to see some fruit from that, which was just encouraging for her. Yeah,
it was so encouraging. We're aware of the time. We'll come in the next 5 minutes, I promise. We had another set of conversations. We also tried to pair some of our kind of more experienced people that just head out onto the streets quite regularly with some people who we just thought actually they maybe they've never done it, or they're really nervous. And one particular pairing, they were out, and he just got her praying. He got her sharing the gospel. Like this guy got healed, and she's like over the moon, like just and it's just coming back with sort of like there's just masses of faith coming back. And I think when you're in a group like this, even if you head out and you don't have any great stories, we came back at the end of the morning for lunch, shared stories, hugely encouraging, faith building. So you go out again, share stories again. We meet for breakfast in the morning, share stories again, go back out, come back for lunch, share more stories. So actually everybody's being kind of built up on everybody else's stories, and kind of switching the pairings around, meaning that some of the gift mixes get moved around too. And so it's just different things. I think that's something which worked really well for us, and actually we saw some really fun things happen, and some people who thought that oh, this isn't really me, seeing people get healed on the streets. And what still baffles me is when people get healed and then you go, great, can I tell you your story? No thanks, see you later, bye. And you're like, your body just got healed. I mean, it's quite clear you were in pain a minute and now you're not. It still baffles me as to how that happens, but that's people, and that's their response. We're looking to find them, and if they're not ready, then they're not ready. Last couple of little things. Do you want to talk about kids' involvement, and then we'll just talk about what we would want to do differently next time?
Yeah, so it really blessed us that some kids did come and get involved with us. I picked up my son, so he'd been in the city centre with another man, and they got in the car, and this man goes, my son's called Eli, and he goes, Eli healed someone's knee. I was like, I'm not sure it was Eli, but that's pretty cool. And this man had our son Eli, who's only 12, praying, laying his hands on and praying, and a whole bunch of teenage lads, all older than him, and Eli had laid his hands on and prayed for this teenage lad's knee, and God had healed it. And he'd prayed 3 times, so I was like, wow, that's incredible. Just seeing the kids step up in courage was really
encouraging,
really great. And I think we just felt really blessed by that, and excited to see them excited about sharing Jesus with people. We're just thinking, like, to finish, what we would maybe do differently if we did this again, what sort of our takeaways. So I think for Chris and I, we felt like we should have involved our local team more in the planning and preparation, maybe just spent a bit more time making sure they could make the date, because we felt sad that they've missed a really encouraging time. And so that for us was just a takeaway.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we had the right training for that weekend, but if we did it again, we'd want to help people, like, do some pre-training on how to follow people up better and what that would look like. So that's what we'd maybe do differently. And then I think we'll say what encouraged us personally, or have we already done that?
Yeah, no, go on, Faye.
Yeah, so I was really encouraged that God speaks and he was leading us. It felt really joyful. People that came really enjoyed it. You know, you get rejections, but they knew they were going to get rejected, and they like really enjoyed the time. And like Chris said, there was that the first day I had spiritual conversations, but nothing really, like no follow-up conversations. But because we could hear the stories from other people, it was just really encouraging to hear the team aspect of those stories. So that was great. Yeah, those are my takeaways.
Yeah, and we just felt we really felt like prayer was the key thing that had made the massive difference. It was incredible to go out with all that prayer. And so I guess it made us think we also need to keep covering ourselves with that prayer when we go out. And so that's been great, really exciting to see how God moves in response to our prayer, which we all know. But
yeah, and so encouraged just seeing the journey, I think, for some of our kids, in seeing, oh, God's on the move, God's doing things. Like the norm for some of our kids is that God is moving and they're involved in seeing him do extraordinary things. I think that's a huge encouragement. There's, you know, they're not just learning stuff, but they're seeing stuff. They're seeing what God is doing, and that's so encouraging. Is there any questions in the group here? I'm going to put a question in the chat in just a sec for our breakout groups. But any questions here, Chris? If you think we've run out of time, feel free to just, or Susie, feel free to just take over this time and tell us to stop.
Carry on. Any questions?
I have one. I think I heard Faye mention Friends of India. Did I get that? Did I catch that right? You're you're muted, Faye.
Yeah.
Okay, so what exactly?
That's right. Can you remember when Jim and a few people went to India in September? I think 2 Septembers last year and this year. It's that group of people, that movement in India, and the emails they send before their summer outreach. I mean, then they're meeting like thousands of people. It's a bit different, but their emails are really useful tools. Yeah.
Okay. And so is it possible for you guys to send Chris Galanos this stuff and he can distribute it to the whole group? Would that work?
We can put it on Slack if you want.
Yeah, Slack works. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm particularly interested in the prayer format that you guys had. Yeah.
Yeah, and we just use like a kind of database, like Church Suite. We use that in the UK. It's like a kind of church database that people could just sign up to. So then we've got their names and their emails, and then we can email them out. So just kind of some way of gleaning their information, and then going from there.
I have a question, especially for you, Chris and Lisa. There are a number of people that are part of our disciple making group here, and probably just across the network, that have a small team, maybe just a couple of people where they are. And what would you say to them? Because if you only have a couple of people and you think, we can't do a push here because we don't have 25 people, or we don't have a great big group like Brent does in Oregon. What would you say to people if they just have a couple of people to actually do a push with? Is it worth doing it? What would you say?
I'd say, how many people have you got that you can ask to pray for you? And how much time how much, how can you encourage them and invite them to pray, and make that your kind of set a date and just get people praying, and you can go with 2 people, but I think it's about having that thinking, actually, because you can think, oh, I'm going to go out among the lost at some point this week, but actually to spend a whole Saturday of just like praying, going out, eating, going out, or fasting if you want to, but that just, there's something amazing about dedicating your time, even if it is just 2. It's not just, never just 2, is it? Because Jesus is with you. So I would say it's just as much about the prayer and preparation, and the intention of it is really important. And sorry, but the other thing that I felt really encouraged by was that although we were out meeting strangers, nearly in the places I went, nearly everybody I met was connected to somebody else. And so I just thought that's amazing, because God directed us to those people, but it also just made me think, this is a really essential part of it. It's not just about our everyday life, it's about doing something extraordinary above your everyday life, that then gives you more connections in your everyday life. So I think it's worth doing, even if you think, I do go out every weekend. It's worth making an effort to do something.
And we were really blessed by the partnership with Faye and her team. So there was only a few from our team, but there were others from her team. So together we were a group, and then we added a few other people in. So I think, if you like asking on this group or on the Slack group, is there anyone from any other cities who could join us? Is there anyone who could just come and help us? There's just 2 of us, but maybe we could get it to 4. And so suddenly 4 feels like, okay, we can meet in a lounge, we can pray together, we're going to go out, and we're going to come back. Like, there's some rhythm to it that it feels a bit more so I think collaboration and working together is just so key.
Amen. That is awesome. Well, thank you guys for sharing with us from your experience and what you did. Yeah, let's celebrate with them. Did you hear what he said at the beginning? This is a place that's 30% Muslim, that they were going out. And so that's really different from where I am. I don't know if it's different from where you were, where you are. And Chris has put in the chat a question for us to include as part of our breakout discussion. What one thing have you taken away from today to either do or not do in your next push week? So that's a good question for us to discuss in our breakouts. I love this. You had 18 future contacts. And as a person who meets with you as your coach every week, I can tell you that's not the normal report from week to week, that they had 18 people give them their phone numbers. This is a major breakthrough for them. And I'm just so thrilled that we put this emphasis on push weeks, and that they even looked at, I don't know what we can do, but we're going to go out, launch out, trust God to help us and do this. And I think they had a huge breakthrough with what they've done in their push. So thrilled for you guys.
One more question, Susie.
Yeah.
You brought up that the 18 follow-ups. How did you guys, Chris, Lisa, how did you guys track your spiritual conversations and follow up the number of people?
Faye, do you want to go for that?
With the number of people that you
I
follow
think
with?
just sorry, John, at each point of at every lunch or at the end of the day, we just tallied them on a chart. We said to people at the very beginning, this is what we're looking for. We're going to monitor spiritual conversations and follow-up conversations. And then we just recorded them on there. And then each of us got in touch with the people that had met up with those specific people and asked them to follow them up to start with. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all so much. Bob Neiman, would you mind praying for our folks there in Leeds and Bradford and their work? Do you mind?
mute here. There we go. Father, we're just absolutely thrilled and excited and inspired and blessed by the testimony that you have created by the outreach of our dear sisters and our brother in the United Kingdom. Father, thank you for week to week how you're instructing us, inspiring us, and guiding us. And may what they've experienced as they went out by faith in your name transfer into lessons and principles that we can unfold into our push weeks as well. What we intend on doing that now your spirit is saying don't need to do that, cross that off the list. What we didn't intend on doing that we need to add, and what we intend on doing that needs to stay. All to your glory. We give you thanks in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Well, we can't wait to hear more reports about pushes that are upcoming.